Mr. Chair and members of the committee, thank you so much for your time today. My name is Ben Hellerstein. I'm a student at Carlton College in Northfield and one of the co-chairs of our chapter of MPIRG, the Minnesota Public Interest Research Group. MPIRG is a student-directed organization at 8 colleges and universities across Minnesota that works to give students a voice in the political process. Now, I'm from the suburbs of New York originally, and when I decided to come to school at Carleton, really the main reason was I fell in love with the state of Minnesota. And I realized from the first time that I set foot here that this is a welcoming and a friendly place, and a place that invites people to get involved without putting up a lot of unnecessary barriers and obstacles. And I feel that nothing captures Minnesota's welcoming and friendly atmosphere better than its voter registration laws. Like I said, Minnesota invites us to get involved, it encourages us to participate, and it provides us with as many opportunities as possible to do so. Many states, it seems like the intent of their voter laws is to make it difficult for people to participate. But in Minnesota, that's not the case, and that's especially important for certain groups of voters, like college students, where the quote-unquote traditional forms of identification simply don't work very well. As a result of Minnesota's great voter registration laws, this state has the highest youth voter turnout rate in the country. That's a tremendous accomplishment. It really is, and it's something that the state should be very proud of. And furthermore, that the legislature should consider very carefully before making any modifications to the process that might jeopardize that high voter turnout. On the day of the August primary election this summer, I got a call from my friend Alex. She's from California originally, but she considers herself a resident of Minnesota, and she very much wanted to vote here. She had just turned 18 the previous year, so she wasn't registered yet. Alex told me that she was about to head over to the polling place. She had heard about these great same-day registration laws, but she wasn't sure that she was going to be able to vote. The college didn't submit a resident list because, of course, classes weren't in session. She had a copy of her tuition statement, but it didn't contain her current address, and the utility bills for her home were not in her own name. The only way she was able to vote that day was because I went with her to the polling place, and I said, "Mr. Election Judge, this is my friend Alex. She is a resident of this precinct. Please allow her to vote." I vouched for her, and because of that, she was able to vote. She came out of the polling place with this huge smile on her face, and she had this, little red "I voted" sticker on her shirt. She wore that sticker with more pride than I've ever seen anyone wear a sticker in the rest of my life. She felt great because she got to participate, and I felt good too because in some small way I had helped her to participate. And I think that maybe that's the greatest gift we can give somebody in a democratic society, is regardless of their political views, is to help them make their voices heard. I'm concerned about the bills that are under discussion today because they will place major obstacles in the way of students who want to participate in the political process. Requiring a photo ID with your current address would be a tremendous challenge for college students who change residences at least 4 times in the span of 4 years. So under this process, they would need to get a new driver's license with their current address every single year. That would be extremely difficult for out-of-state students. Furthermore, the elimination of vouching in Senate File 509 would take away a critical option for voters when all other forms of identification fail, as they did for my friend Alex this summer. Provisional balloting is at best a partial solution, since it would require voters to take a trip to the county auditor's office, which in the case of Rice County is about 30 to 45 minutes away, not a short trip. And it requires voters to verify their identity with the same form of identification that they didn't have on election day. Ultimately, this legislation attempts to solve a problem that doesn't exist. There are simply very few confirmed cases of deliberate voter fraud in Minnesota that would be prevented under this legislation. How many instances of fraudulent voting will these bills prevent each year? A few. A few. And yet, how many legitimate voters will be disenfranchised? Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. So my question is, why? Why make it more difficult to vote? In the absence of compelling evidence for deliberate voter fraud, why place obstacles in the way of those, like my friend Alex, who just want to participate in the democratic process? Why?
Well, I have a why. Maybe you could explain to me, how would we know how many people were drinking underage if we never ID'd them?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I see the connection.
Well, we're stating here that there is no problem, that everything is fine and everyone should be able to do it, but we don't check. And so my question is, how do we know that the people voting are who they say they are? We don't require any identification. They just come in, sign up and vote, and leave. So you're stating we have no problem, this is a great friendly place, we let everyone vote. How do we know people are voting who maybe aren't supposed to be?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think that the draw to participate in the democratic process is pretty great, but I don't know if it's so great that somebody would be motivated to vote fraudulently at risk of a felony conviction, no matter how small that risk might be. That would be what I would say to that.
Any other questions for the witness? Senator Kamen.
You claim that you made a connection. I'd like a little expansion on that. Because we have no voter ID requirement, therefore we have high voter turnout. Can you expand on that a bit? How do you make that connection?
Certainly. If the requirement was in place for students to have a in-state piece of identification with their current address on it, essentially that would add an additional burden to anybody who wished to participate in the democratic process. And anytime you're adding an additional burden, you're going to decrease the number of people who are going to participate. I would say at Carlton, this fall we were out registering students to vote. We got over 300 students, first-time voters, to register, which is a pretty tremendous accomplishment, I think. And if it had been required of them to have an in-state ID with their current address on it, we would have gotten, I don't know, 10, maybe 20. It's simply the type of burden it would create would ensure that only those students who are, absolutely most who can devote a huge amount of time to it would basically be able to vote.